Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I couldn't turn the microphone on there. Little should be had this morning. No, not a bit of it. There we are. That was Ben Sound Buddy, which always brings us in. And there is you can see us if you wish on Mirador Television. It's only a picture of us faffing around, but nonetheless, perhaps a picture of us faffing around first thing in the morning is no bad thing. Let's plunge down the coffee because the beautiful lady on the front desk has made it for me with a smile. She's always got a smile. And there we go. Right, now we're set. Now we are set. Yeah, let's pull the coffee cup over here. Hope that we don't spill it onto the floor. We'll put the paper over there. And we are now set. Actually, we don't get off the bus until 7:20. And if the bus is just marginally late, it means that we're marginally late, and we were marginally late this morning. So it actually is now 7:47, and half a biscuit disappeared onto the floor. What do you mean? Oh. There it is. Got it. You are listening to Rouser Radio on Thursday, the 23rd of June. Where do the days go? In the year 2022. And watch out, because we're going to have thunderstorms out there this morning. There's a weather warning in place. It's going to hit about 21, still quite warm, but you might have to duck and dive and watch for the lightning. Does that sound like a good day? The applause is a bit muted this morning. Okay, Rouser Radio, coming out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewis, and it's a precursor to our television service, Mirador Television, with Break an Egg at 8:30. But we have this little 3/4 of an hour in which to gather our wits, see what's going on, have a little chat. Now, the first thing, before I even turn to the paper this morning, is, let me tell you, be very, 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 I shouldn't say don't use them, but be very, 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 very cautious of O2. It is run by computers. Trying to talk to somebody is almost impossible. In fact, you could be forgiven for wondering whether, in fact, they have people there at all. But of course, computers are limited in what they can do. I have had horrendous days. I still don't know whether I've got a phone service back. I deal with their agents who used to be excellent, and they've lost some of the impetus too, because they've gone to computers. When are we going to learn that computers are to help us, not to replace the human spirit, the human kind, the human greeting? Computers are not there to take over, because otherwise they will be like the Triffids. And the Triffids when they took over, were not kind. And I think the computers, when they take over, as they are indeed, are not kind. So watch out for O2. The big problem is, I hope that on the outside rail, there are some smaller companies cropping up who, if they don't emulate the big boys, might find a niche market of people like me who are completely and utterly pissed off with being pushed around by computers and not getting anywhere. I've been trying to pay a bill, which I didn't know I had with O2. Didn't bother to tell me, it just cut me off. Right? After it cut me off, I've been trying to pay that bill, which I don't think is a bill that's entirely unexpected. But the computer at the bank has sent the money to the computer at O2, and O2's computer says it hasn't received it. What do? I, not the bank, not O2, have to go scouting around to try and prove that I paid this. Well, I have, and I got sweet bugger all from you in response, except nonsensical people who are ill-trained using your Let's Chat. And it's not good enough. Your standards have dropped dramatically. You are no longer a decent company to do business with. And that's true of many of your associates. And when the hell are we all going to wake up to that? Instead of chasing somebody for half a bottle of champagne and an iced cake. Let's start to get some quality back into our daily life and the people we deal with. The banks, the big utility companies, the service industry. It is a government. Ho, ho, ho. Don't talk about government. God almighty. I mean, the only thing that they're good at is collecting money and threatening to take it to court. And then when you get to court, you find that, in fact, it is a threat. They're not listed. And suddenly a little man appears to divert you. And twice now that's happened to me because I've disputed what they're saying. And then they say, oh, they look at, oh, yes, we made a mistake. We'll do this. And they don't. They don't actually do. All they do is they go back and the file goes onto a shelf. I mean, it is crazy. We are run by a bunch of idiots. And when you think that 100 years ago, town halls with town clerks and active mayors were absolutely superb in looking after the local region, is you see in 100 years we have taken huge strides back. And why? Because the computer solves all. Well, it does not solve all. Of course, I'm delighted to have computers. It means I can do what I'm doing right now and what I'll be doing in an hour's time. But I am controlling that. The computer is not controlling me. And the trouble with the big companies is the computer is running the thing. And it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. And until some chief executive wakes up and realizes that he can steal all the competition by bringing an element, just an element of human resource back in, then we are in for a very, very rough ride. But that doesn't mean to say we can't shout and squeal. Do not use O2. Do not use them. He's a lousy, lousy company. I don't know who the chief executive is, and I don't care. He's the man where the buck stops. And if he's daft enough and dumb enough, and indeed incompetent enough to run an organization such as he is, which has absolutely no care whatsoever, corporate social responsibility. Oh, they're probably building a bear trap somewhere in Alaska as their corporate contribution. But they can't even know how to treat their customers properly. And it's beyond the pale. And it's about time that they did so. You know, it is when British Airways were privatized in the 1980s, the thing that they inherited from the old state airline was that none of the planes ever were in the right place at the right time. that they never took off on time. They were always late. What did they do? They took a board member and they gave him the responsibility of looking into this whole thing and to look after putting it right, and he did. And they became the envy of the airline industry in the 1980s after privatization. Their planes were on time. They looked good. They were clean. They were well piloted. Everything was terrific because they put a man, not a computer, in charge of solving the problem. Well, the phone companies are not putting men or human beings in charge. Give it to the computer. It is not good enough. It is not good enough. I am a voice in the wilderness, total voice in the wilderness. But I hope that bit by bit, people will join me until we start to become a full-throated roar is get your act together. Get your act together. Because the phone companies, the credit card companies, the banks are absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. And there is somebody sitting there picking up a huge salary at a time of difficulty for the rest of us, a huge salary to do what? To get everything wrong. You know, I've often wondered why it is that everybody falls over themselves to buy escalators, which they know are going to break down. I'd love to be in the escalator business because I know I'm selling them duff stuff. It'll be installed, and within months, it'll be ground to a halt, and the engineers will have to be in, and it won't be usable for several weeks. And people pay a fortune to actually have them installed. We are crazy. What sort of society have we become? You know, it's all very well to laugh at the fact that at school we used to stand up when the master entered the room. Okay, I'll be correct, politically correct. When the teacher entered the room. But by golly, it made us respect just what we should be looking at in terms of standards. They don't do that anymore, so there are no standards. What we've got is a bunch of idiots from this generation that are in charge who they couldn't punch their way out of a brown paper bag. And we're all supposed to say how marvelous they are because look at the strides of technology. I actually interviewed on this on our television station the other day a man who was an expert in crypto. And he said, artificial intelligence. What is correct is the word artificial. Intelligence leaves a lot to be desired, and it most certainly does. And it's about time somebody woke up to it. Let's have a minister in charge of artificial intelligence to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. Oh, rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. Rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. Let's go. Have some music. Having fun this morning. Right, Ben Sound ukulele, and lovely little piece for us first thing in the morning. Now I've had my rant about the bloody phone companies and their nonsense, and the banks and their nonsense, and I actually said to somebody, you know, when it's proved that I've actually paid this bill, I hope that what they're going to do is to knock 20% off what I owed, because that is fair meat and fair justice. It won't happen. It won't happen. The bank will blame the telephone company, and the telephone company will blame the bank, and on it'll go. It's absolute bloody rubbish. Absolute rubbish. But all we can do is treat them with the disdain which they deserve. The management, the senior management of this particular telephone company, O2, is disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. How they can be there and how they can demand the salaries that they do, I have no idea. None whatsoever. But there we go. That's the scene in which we live. Blue diddy blue, blue diddy blue, blue diddy blue. Ha ha ha. Okay, right. Let's now. The newspaper headlines have got a very disturbing thing, because I'm old enough to have lived through the age of polio, when polio was a dreaded word, and you hoped like hell that your children, or at least in my case, being a child, we didn't get it. And several colleagues and several friends, several youngsters who were at school with us did get it, and lived with their legs in irons and all sorts of things for the rest of their life. It was a dreadful disease, polio, and it would appear that polio is on the return. 40 years we've been without it, and now we're going to suffer it again. And the Metro is nationwide polio alert. Nationwide polio alert. News that the virus that caused polio has been discovered in the UK. A nationwide polio alert, declares the papers, as they warn parents to check their children are vaccinated after traces of the virus were found in Britain's water supply. In the water supply. God help us. Where are we going? So that was the Metro, but the I is the same. Polio found in Britain for the first time in 40 years. Mind you, that must have made the doctors sit up. And I think the resurgence of a lot of these things is because of the system that we've now got. You wait for weeks to see your doctor. God only knows what you're spreading, because you don't know what you've got. But you're in a waiting list. My golly, we've got this wonderful thing. I forget what ours is called here. It's something like the infirmary or the terminal or whatever. Anyway, and it is a collective now of all the surgeries in our small town. And it is lousy. It just doesn't work. But will the NHS, will the people who run this thing admit it? No, they will not. No, they will not. They don't have to worry, for God's sake. They're doctors, they're nurses, they're first in line. They have no idea, no concept what it's like to wait in line and to be treated the way that you are. A, by receptionists who know sweet diddly squat, and who are the most arrogant, turning into the most arrogant group of people that you could ever wish to meet. At one time, I knew everybody at my surgery. I knew all the ladies there. I would have a joke with them. I could walk in. I didn't even have to give them my date of birth. They knew how to tap in straight away. I don't know any of them now. And frankly, I don't want to. It is not a pleasant experience anymore, walking into my surgery. And they've managed to take that away as well. What is it about this modern generation that want to make us the most foul, treating tempered people that the world has ever known. We don't talk to one another anymore. There's no human contact. There's no humanity. There's no concern, no care. No, you can't see the doctor. You're going to tell me what's wrong with you. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, let me show you with a little twitch of my shoulders how important I am. For God's sake, get with it. Our whole society we are paralyzed as a nation in almost every sector by people who literally should not be in the jobs that they're in. They're badly trained. They don't have the qualifications. Most of them have probably got a degree. Degrees which are now rubbish. Oh. And I think that probably the resurgence of some of these things like polio can actually find, to some extent, its roots in the fact that nobody gives a damn anymore, except that what they need to do is to satisfy their own rules and regulations, the rules and regulations which they made. The Daily Mail, polio is back in the UK after 40 years. The virus is back in the UK for the first time in 40 years, the Mail says. And experts repeatedly found samples of the virus at a wastewater site. Financial Times. Sunak defends 10% pension rise as teachers threaten strikes over pay. Well, you know, isn't it funny? Everybody now is, what do you mean giving pensioners a 10% rise? At one time, it would have been, my goodness me, we should give pensioners a 10% rise. We should look after these people who gave their lives and their skills and their talents to trying to make life a little bit better. And let's show our gratitude. Not a bit of it anymore. This me generation is, they're getting more than we are. Well, shut off, you nasty, nasty people. I look at you in the coffee shops with your chatter, blah, 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 and your knitting and your babies, right? Totally unaware of what the hell's going on around you, and you don't even care. Well, apparently about 40% of you are in for a bit of a shock, because as long as we keep on working from home, that's 40% of the divorce rate. It is shooting up like crazy because you can't stand each other. But then you go out and you expect us to stand your silly nonsense. Blah, blah, blah. The Daily Express. It's only fair. Rishi defends £1,000 boost to pensions. I don't know where the £1,000 comes from. Is 10% of my pension wouldn't be anywhere near taking to £1,000. Perhaps it tells us, does it? It's only fair. Sunak said the increase would benefit those who are among the most vulnerable people in our society. Oh, he's right there. The figures are like every other figure put out by government. Have no idea at all what it's all about. The Guardian. Talks to end the rail dispute break down in acrimony. Oh, why wouldn't they? After all, they're between people of this generation who know diddly squat. It doesn't matter whether they're representing the government, whether they're representing the rail management, or whether they're representing the unions. They are all useless bloody tits. That's what they are. And the sooner that they start to realize that and get their act together and try to get some respect. Yes, in the past, some of the union barons were awful, nasty people. But at least they were intelligent. At least they knew what they were doing. At least they knew what negotiating is all about. This lot? Nah, not a bit of it. They have no idea whatsoever. It's just me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Well, I don't know where you think the bloody money is coming from, because if people can't work because of your strike, they can't pay taxes. They can't pay taxes. Nothing is going into the Chancellery. Nothing's going into the Chancellery. They can't actually pay your money. Talk about shooting the foot. Ha! The Times. Unions pile pressure on bosses after a 7% pay deal. Apparently there is one small railway company that is privately owned. And its deal is with its own particular union. And they have come to a 7% pay agreement. But as everybody points out very quickly, from the government side, and from the negotiating side, and from management side, is they are not bound with the national unions or the national rail system. They are people who are quite independent of all that nonsense. And it sounds to me that if they can actually satisfactorily run a railway properly, then the rest should be able to. A plague on all their houses. I'd love to throw them all into the ditch. Let them taste trying to make ends meet on a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Let them try. Oh, we couldn't possibly do that. Gosh, no. And we can't afford our perks. What has the government told its good morning? What has the government told its employees, MPs, and so on and so forth? Just get the old Uber and put it on your expenses. Ha, sure, we can all do that, can't we? Like hell we can. And it's that sort of waving it. Boris, you are starting to get my sneaking respect. But when you allow your people to talk like that, it just shows a complete and utter lack of understanding of the people you represent. Yet with it, I've never met my MP. The one before, who was not in my political persuasion, is I regularly have a drink with. I like him. We have a nice chat. But I would bump into him all the time on the high street. This one, haven't a clue what she even looks like. Not a clue. Never mind, it's an election coming up, isn't there? The Daily Telegraph. Teacher strike would be unforgivable, says Zahawi. Zawi. Who the hell is Zawi? The Education Secretary. Oh, I do. God Almighty, you see, that shows just the state of the nation. Here is the Education Secretary, Zawi. Nadim Zawi. And I had no idea that's who was the teacher secretary. Saying strikes on teachers would be unforgivable. Officials are drawing up plans for supply teachers to keep schools going if the teachers' union goes on strike. And actually, this chap says, our students, our children have suffered enough because of COVID and so on. So he's absolutely right. And if the teachers union are going to do this, they have no concept whatsoever what their business is. No concept whatsoever. But why am I surprised? The phone companies can't run phone companies. The banks can't run banks. Government can't run government. Why should we expect schools to have people in charge who can run schools? Huh. That'd be a turn up for the books. The Mirror. Got to keep pay down, Prime Minister. Try telling this lot. The Daily Mirror is saying fat cat bosses at firms facing strikes over wages have got to keep pay down. trying telling this lot, the paper says, because the government is talking about taking the cap on executive pay off and letting it go free flow. The Sun, get me to the judge on time. The Sun pictures, Katie Price, who was a bridesmaid at her sister's wedding on Wednesday, is on the front page. The paper reports that the wedding was brought forward because the reality star is due in court this week. Well, the chances are that she's due in court in the courthouse immediately over the road. And I suppose we must keep an eye open for that if she's going to be sentenced, because there will be an awful lot of photographers around and so on. Why, I have no idea. Katie Price is just Katie Price, for God's sake. Daily Star. Oh, actually, the BBC were making a big fuss of Kate Bush, and I have to say, she is one of my favourite singers. She was unusual, different. Her music was quite remarkable, and apparently he's come roaring back towards number one with an old piece, and oh, how terrific! And then the other story is that a psychotic seagull is holding a guy hostage. He can't go out of his house because he's attacked by this seagull. Oh, dear. It's a fisherman. And every time he goes out, this seagull comes zooming down. Oh, dear. Okay, but generally speaking, with the second rail strike of the week underway, the papers focus anger on what it calls the risible, archaic working practices that plague the railways. And actually, yes, they are archaic. I remember in the 70s and the 80s, when the unions were king, is how we were restricted in what we could do and what we couldn't do. Silly practices that went back. Actually, is there's something called a glove allowance. Is that the newspaper loaders had a glove allowance, which was to pay for gloves, so that when they actually put the papers into the back of the lorry, they didn't cut their hands on the wire. The only thing is that no longer were the papers bound by wire, and no longer were these men required to put them into the back of papers, back of the lorries, the trucks. But they were still paid a glove allowance. That's how ridiculous it was. And they went on strike over the glove allowance as well. Oh, dearie me. Where are we in time? It is 8:09. Oh, my goodness me. And it is the 23rd, Thursday, the 23rd of June in 2022. And we haven't played anything yet. So we better, hadn't we? Down with your Get Up from the Mini Vandals. Let's try that. Down with your get up, the mini vandals. You're listening to Rouser Radio coming out of the White Hart Hotel in the centre of Lewes in East Sussex in the United Kingdom. Good morning, good morning, good morning. We're only here for a very short while. In fact, we're going to disappear in about 3 minutes' time. But it's good to have you with us, even if it's for a short period of time. The weather outside is going to hit about 21, 22, but we can expect thunderstorms. In fact, quite a series of thunderstorms. There is a weather warning being put out by the Met Office to say watch out. And do watch out, because thunderstorms mean lightning, and lightning can be very difficult. I once was privileged to lie on a summer's night in Africa watching an African thunderstorm. And some African thunderstorms are absolutely brilliant because the sky is clear except for puffy clouds. And the lightning doesn't go from the clouds to the ground, it goes from cloud to cloud. And it is astonishingly beautiful. A remarkable experience. If you ever get the chance, share it. It is beautiful, it is wonderful. I can't tell you, the experience was phenomenal. Right, okay. Now, there are two things before we go, because it is now 8:14. Two things before we go. One, polio is resurgent. Be very mindful. This is a nasty, nasty, vicious disease. It takes away the use of limbs. It can kill. It is a virus that we shouldn't actually play with. It's been 40 years since the last case of polio, and now it's raising its head again. And actually, you know, so many things are bouncing back. So many viruses, so many bugs, so many germs entering our lives. It makes me ask, what are we doing that is permitting this rise in ill health? What are we doing that's wrong? I think that our entire way of living needs an overhaul. We need to look at a few things. Yes. Huh. Yes. There we go. I have to say goodbye. Oh, the other thing, by the way, is the rail strike, of course, is we have a continuing rail strike, difficult to get anywhere. As a consequence, those who like to have an excuse for not doing anything have got the marvelous excuse. So that will add to everything else that's going on. Right, you are. Let's bounce on Buddy to see us out. Toodle pip. See you tomorrow morning.